So I think a central value of civilization is that the continuation of this way of life, the continuation of civilization itself, is more important than anything else on Earth. Anything else in the universe is more important than the lives of passenger pigeons. It's more important than the lives of forests. It's more important than the lives of human beings. Have you talked to anybody about Lewis Mumford? Okay. Lewis Mumford Lewis Mumford came up with the concept of a technic, T-E-C-H-N-I-C. Technologies don't arise out of a vacuum. They arise from certain social conditions, and then once a technology has been created, it gives rise to more social conditions. It influences society. So the Talo Indians lived here for 12,500 years, and they didn't invent refrigerators. It's not because they were too stupid to invent refrigerators, it's because their social system and the ecological systems gave them no need to. When you've got salmon running up the river, you don't need refrigerators because meat stays much fresher in the river than it does even in a refrigerator. And what Mumford realized was that so the combination of technology and society, he called a technic. And what he realized is that some techniques are democratic and some are authoritarian. Some technologies spring from and give rise to democratic decision-making processes. And one example would be basket weaving, because nobody can control your access to the materials to make baskets. And anybody can make them. They can make them poorly or well. I'm not saying there's not skill involved, but it's a technology that does not require an authoritarian system. And other technologies require authoritarian systems. Anything that involves mining would be one example, because mines are one of the first forms of slavery, and they're also incredibly destructive in other means. And once you have a mine, you have to protect the ore, and then you have to protect the smelted ore, you have to protect the metal, so it gives rise to military and the police, whereas again basket weaving does not. And a really good example of this is I was being interviewed several years ago by this guy who was a dedicated Marxist who believed that you could have an industrial system with only purely voluntary exchanges. There would be no exploitation of anyone. And he believed you can have cities and still have this. I said, great. In your city, how do you get around? He said, on a bus. I said, great. What's the bus made of? He said, metal. I said, great. Where do you get the metal? He said, mines. I said, great. So how do you get people to work in the mines? He said, you pay them a lot. I said, well, you know, we got the whole slavery problem, but I'll give you that one. But what do you do about the fact that every hard rock mine on the planet has polluted groundwater and rivers? So what do you do? You know, obviously non-humans aren't important to you. So what do you do about the humans who live next to the river? And he said, well, you pay them to move. I said, great. What happens if they've been living there for 5,000 years, they will not move? He said, you pay them more. I said, no, their ancestors are buried there, and they won't leave their ancestors, so they're not going to move. He said, how many are there? I said, I don't know, 500. What difference does it make? He said, well, the 1 million people in the city vote, and they vote that the 500 people have to leave, and then you kick them off. I said, great. So what you've done is you've gone from purely voluntary exchanges to democratic empire, land theft from indigenous people, and genocide, all within less than a minute, all so you can have a bus. And the point is that that's an authoritarian system. And Lewis Mumford called them authoritarian not only because the systems required authoritarian power structures, but also because the systems, the technologies themselves become authoritarian. The technologies themselves take on a logic of their own, and the technologies themselves are in charge. So ask yourself, when people build cities, are they built mainly for human beings or for cars? They're built for cars. The end point of all this, Mumford asked, can democracy survive? He said, the question is absurd because life itself can't survive this. So the end point, if we don't stop this culture, is the end of life on Earth. It will kill everything that it can. And what is the, years ago I was doing I was sharing the stage with Ward Churchill, and he and I were chatting backstage, and I said, God, you know, it's so stupid. The Germans were, I mean, as well as committing these atrocities, they were so stupid to keep such careful, meticulous records of the Holocaust. I mean, because you know, if you lose, that's going to be used against you. That's crazy. And he just looked at me and said, Derrick, what do you think GNP is? And what GNP is a measure of how fast you're converting the living into the dead. Because the living forest does not contribute to GNP. What contributes to GNP is 2x4s. Living schools of fish in the ocean don't contribute to GNP. When you convert them to fish sticks, they contribute to GNP.